Hey folks, David Stewart here. Hope you guys are having a great day. I came across something very interesting in my feed and I just wanted to share it with you because I think it's a great leaping off point for a lot of discussions, and that is the enhanced games. What is the enhanced games? Well, it is created, as far as I know, by an Australian entrepreneur named Aaron D'Souza, and the idea is there are not going to be any restrictions on the competition. Now, what that means as far as restrictions, that is restrictions as far as what kind of things you can put in your body. So you can use as many performance-enhancing drugs as you want in as many different dosages and as many different combinations, all the way up to competition, not just for your off-season training. It's not drug tested at all. So the competition is open as far as what you do for the events, but there's obviously going to be rules for whatever the events are. Like, if you're running, you can't knock the other person over. But using drugs is not against the rules for the enhanced games. And I love challenging some of the preconception and normie ideas that people have about steroids and just thinking about them a little bit more outside the box. So that's kind of what I'd like to talk about in this video, besides just the idea of the enhanced games. I think it's great for us to rethink some of the, programming we've tended to get over the years about the use of steroids. So I notice normal people tend to have two views of steroids. One is that steroids are always bad, like it's bad to use steroids. They don't really think that these drugs were created for medical reasons and that there might be a medical reason for you to use an exogenous hormone or something like that. We have a kind of this constructed frame of what it means to be a natural athlete and what natural is, that, using steroids is always cheating, that you should win a competition because of your genetics or because of how hard you trained, and things like that. The other half of that is a belief that the sports that you watch are clean, that the athletes that you're watching are natural, that they're not using a lot of hormones. And I tend to take some exceptions with both of those categories. Let me start with the second one. Are the competitions that you're watching clean? I don't think they are. I can't give you a bunch of firm evidence as to exactly how many people are using exogenous hormones in what quantities and where they are. But, the word on the street is that, most professional sports are pretty dirty. Even if you're being drug tested, say during competition, you may use a lot of stuff off season when you're not being drug tested in order to boost yourself up, right? Like you can use steroids to build a bunch of muscle. You can use a PCT, come off of your drug cycle before competition, before you're going to be drug tested, and then you're going to keep a large portion of those games. You're not going to keep all of them. But the rule of thumb is usually about 50%. So if you put on 20 pounds of muscle, you keep 10 pounds of that. That's 10 extra pounds of muscle that you normally wouldn't have, or would have taken an extra 10 years of intense training to build up. It's very hard to build a lot of muscle past a certain point. So that extra 10 pounds of muscle gives you a definite competitive advantage in most sports. So even though during the time of the competition you're natural, you're not on the exogenous hormones, past use of the hormones will enhance your body in the future, even after you come off of the drugs. There's also drugs that get out of your system really quickly. So I remember I reviewed this documentary. I think it won an Academy Award, even though it was not necessarily a well-made documentary. And for whatever reason, the name just fell out of my head before. I should have written it down before I started the video. But I did a video on it. I did a review, and while it was not a super well-made documentary, and the music was terrible, it had a super interesting subject. Was this Russian guy talking about how he doped Olympic athletes. So Olympic athletes have been doping for a long time. There's been all these controversies. They call it doping. What they mean is using performance-enhancing drugs of various kinds. Of course, with cycling, we had Lance Armstrong got caught for using all kinds of stuff, but they couldn't give it to anyone else because everyone else was using it too. So it's really common, I believe, in most professional sports and highly competitive things using the body for people to use performance enhancing drugs in some whatever capacity they can get away with. They're going to do it because it's going to give them a definite advantage. They'll use it in the off season to train and build extra muscle. They'll use whatever is not being tested. They'll find a new thing that's not being tested for and use that for competition. They'll take blood out of their body and put it back into their body. There's competitors that have gotten disqualified for having too much blood, to having too high a red blood cell count, so that you put that extra blood in your body, which lets you more efficiently transport oxygen for a really intense athletic event. These sorts of things have been going on forever, and I think it's kind of naive to think we've stamped out doping in regular competition. Rather, it's more just covert. So the enhanced games just puts it out in the open. It says, okay, well, because there's so much doping, why don't we just have a competition where people can just dope as much as they want? They can just use as many performance enhancing drugs as they want. They can train in whatever way is going to optimize actual performance. We're not going to worry about trying to drug test the athletes. Is that fair? And I actually think it's more fair than the covert way of operating, because if you think about the Olympics, if you are somebody who isn't in on the drug use for the Olympic team, like you're not part of that circle maybe, then you go to the Olympics and you lose to other athletes who their country has bothered to put them on a highly efficient drug regimen leading up to the Olympic Games. If they know you're going to the Olympics in 2 years, maybe they're going to pump you up with a bunch of drugs and get your body to like an extreme shape, and then taper you off, use a PCT, post-cycle therapy, before you have to start testing for the games. A lot of them, because they know how the drug testing works, they know ways to get around it. And so if you're not using those drugs, you're going to be at a disadvantage. Well, in this case, hey, they're not cheaters like most people think. Oh, the cheaters prosper. They're cheating by taking drugs. Well, no, if everyone can use it, it's not cheating. It's not violating any rules of the competition. Rather, the normal way is that it's who can get away with cheating is the person who's going to have the biggest advantage. There's such a strong upside to cheating, and there's not that much of a downside. What's the downside to cheating? Especially if you feel like you can get away with it? Well, what if you get caught and you lose your Olympic gold medal? Well, you're in the same position that you were as if you lost and didn't win a gold medal at all, right? So if you don't use any drugs and you come in 20th place, you don't get anything for that. And if you use drugs and you win and you don't catch you in the test, you get to keep the medal. And if they do catch you, well, you're in the same position as the guy who was 20th in the games. Only you could say, well, I actually did medal, but they tested positive because because my test was slightly high. And a lot of the ways that they test things is they set an upper limit on the testosterone that you can have, which means you could actually use exogenous testosterone, but only a certain amount, right? Like the HRT wouldn't show up on the drug testing if you're using, pharmaceutical grade testosterone. If you're a little bit low, you can use it, or you can boost it a little bit above natural levels, and you're fine. Like, you're good to go for that because it doesn't meet the standards for too much testosterone. Well, the enhanced games, we just take that limit off. Yeah, you can shoot as much test as you want. You can slam as much primo as you want, whatever you need to use to get yourself up to the maximum level. That's what we want. And I'll tell you that the truth is that people love watching freaks. They loved watching Barry Bonds hit all those home runs. And the fact that he used steroids, it upsets a lot of people that think he's a cheater. Everyone else is using it too. You can pretty much bet on that Barry Bonds is not doing a whole bunch of extra that everybody else wasn't doing. There's also the belief that it's cheating because you're gaining an advantage over people who aren't doing it. Well, if they're all doing it, then it's not really cheating. And no, in my opinion, a rule that is not enforced is not really a rule. But it's this idea we should have a competition to see who has the best genetics, and that's automatically who should win. You think about it, the level of talent that exists with professional athletes is astounding. Right, there's an inborn, you're kind of born that way. You're born to be an exceptional athlete in a lot of cases. And so, should they just get a gold medal because they happen to get the genetic lottery, whereas someone else can't refine what they're doing with training and managing drugs or something better than other people? What do you want the competition to be? If you do a lot of drug testing, maybe you can get it to be just genetics, in which case we're giving a gold medal for a guy because he won the genetic lottery. The truth is, we like to watch the freaks. We like to watch the fastest guy, the biggest guy. We like to see the most muscular man. We like to see all those home runs getting hit. When there was the big home run competition back in, was it the late 90s, maybe year 2000 with, who was it, Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, that they were enhanced. In fact, Mark McGuire came out and goes, no, I wasn't using steroids. I was just using prohormones, using andro. Oh, well, a prohormone is just a steroid attached to another molecule so that it doesn't show up. It's a designer steroid, right? It's just taking testosterone. He took a bunch of exogenous testosterone, built a crap ton of muscle, and was able to hit the ball harder than other people, or hit the ball harder than he otherwise would have without the drugs. So the enhanced games is actually more fair than regular professional games because there's such a disparity as to who can manage the drugs better and who has the better team to figure out the testing and all that kind of stuff. So it actually levels the playing field a lot more than I think regular sports are. Now, going back to this, like, is it bad to use steroids? Well, if it's in violation of the rules of the game, then yeah, it's cheating. Lots of normal people use steroids for a lot of reasons, and they're not necessarily abusing them. I will say, though, that, by caution with normal people thinking like, oh, I should hop on steroids, is like, look at the consequences of steroid use. Everything has risks and benefits. So we've had a lot of young bodybuilders die. Guys like Dallas McCarver, who was an IFBB pro. There was also, of course, the infamous Boston Lloyd, died of a heart attack in his 20s. These guys were young and died, I believe, because of the performance-enhancing drug use. They used large amounts of anabolic steroids. They used lots of drugs in addition to that. I know when Boston Lloyd died, he was actually in kidney failure from one of the drugs that he had taken. Nasser El-Sanbadi, who was, I think the best he did was second place in one of the 1990s Olympias, maybe 1995. Really tremendous bodybuilder from Egypt. He died of kidney failure. He didn't die of a heart attack or something. He died of kidney failure, and that was probably because of all of the show prep, right? You take diuretics to flush all the water out of your skin, make your skin like paper thin, make you that much more shredded for a competition. You do that a lot over years, it can tax your kidneys. He got into kidney failure. Probably other drugs like that also taxed his kidneys. All of the many performance-enhancing drugs you have to use in order to compete, and in the IFBB, they are going to take a toll on your body. So I'm not endorsing that anyone use performance-enhancing drugs, but rather I'm saying that I don't view them as necessarily completely negative. In fact, one of the things that I thought of with this recent weight loss injection, which is an appetite suppressant, but it's a hormone that you inject, is we don't really think about using anabolic steroids in a therapeutic way ever, right? Somebody who needs to lose a lot of weight, somebody who's very out of shape, if you put them on an exercise regimen and a diet, and you added like a 6-week cycle of higher testosterone so they could build more muscle, that would permanently, they'd keep a large portion of that after coming off. It would permanently raise their base metabolic rate so that they could lose more weight over time without having to do as much work, right? Like, it could actually improve their health. They're already overweight. They already have risks from just being overweight. The goal medically should be to get rid of all that weight as much as possible. Yeah, give them the injections to kill their appetite. Also give them steroids so that they want to work out and that they feel better all the time. They have more energy and they build more muscle when they are doing their exercise that goes with their diet. And all of a sudden you may get healthier faster. And if you get healthier faster, the 6 weeks of steroids may be, and I'm not saying they are, but maybe doctors can figure this out. Maybe the 6 weeks of steroids would be a much less taxing thing on their health for the duration of their life than being obese for an extra year, right? Or being overweight for an extra year, like significantly overweight. So I don't view these things as like all bad or all good. There's people who need to take exogenous hormones for lots of reasons, like because they have HIV, or because they just they have testicular cancer and they have to take exogenous hormones and things like that. So there's lots of reasons why people have to take steroids, not just to abuse them and to become a super jacked bodybuilder. And most people are frankly not going to be interested in taking all of the performance enhancing drugs to enhance their athletic capacity either, because they're not athletes. They just want to look good. So, using those things under a doctor's supervision, I'm not necessarily against it. I think it can enhance people's lives. The other thing is, our life is full of enhancements. And cording off this little area that's like no drug enhancements allowed, I think is, it just doesn't flow from the logic of thinking about these other things, right? So, for instance, we have things like glasses. Now, glasses are not technically an enhancement in most cases. They are a correction, right? They're called corrective lenses. But you can put on reading glasses and see things bigger. You can get out a magnifying glass and see things bigger. You're enhancing your vision. You get out binoculars and look far across the field. You are using an enhancement to your senses in order to see things further away. You put optics on a gun. You can see the game further away, right? You're enhancing things. I don't think it's necessarily natural the way that we normally live our lives. There's nothing natural about eating like 5 pounds of chicken breast every day. So if you're like, I'm a natty bodybuilder and I eat 5 pounds of chicken every day, well, it's like, well, that is great. That's not really natural. Like, you wouldn't eat 5 pounds of chicken in some kind of state of nature. You also wouldn't be using all the BCAAs and all the other supplements that you use that just don't happen to be steroids, like taking creatine supplements. There's nothing natural about that. It's just not as effective as taking exogenous testosterone. So we draw a little box around stuff and we're like, this is natural, this is not. You're talking, we have these magic devices called phones that we use. We have all sorts of enhancements to our lives. And you get in a car, it's kind of like you're using a machine to enhance your speed so you can go very fast between places. And we're like, that's normal. But somehow when it comes to using medical drugs to enhance things, it's like that's a big no-no. And that's just because we've had years of athletes, who've suffered negative consequences from using them, and you should know about that, but also athletes that are in leagues that control that or try to drug test, and therefore it would be cheating in those contexts, but it wouldn't be cheating in the context of the enhanced games. And that was the big thing that I wanted to get across. So anyway, I would love to hear your opinions on this. Is using steroids, exogenous hormones, other performance enhancing drugs, SARMs that might increase your cardiovascular capacity, is this cheating? Is it cheating even if we have a competition where all that's allowed? Would anybody want to watch a competition where everyone is allowed to be as freaky high performance as possible? I will weigh in on that, and I will say I think it's possible they would because of bodybuilding. Bodybuilding is already that thing where it's, do whatever you want. There's no real drug testing bodybuilding because they know people love to see the freaks. But bodybuilding is not really mainstream. So I think you'd have a lot of people with the normie conception of like using steroids as cheating. So why would I want to watch a competition that's just allows cheating? It's like, it's not cheating if it's allowed, right? Anyway, so hopefully I've made a case for why we should think about this in a little bit different dimension, and leave me your thoughts down below. I'd love to know what other people think about this, having enhanced games. I guess there's also maybe a second order negative consequence that I'll end with, which is that if you normalize using a lot of things like steroids, could that have a negative health consequence to the population at large that wants to use them, right? So if we normalize using tests and other kinds of, testosterone-like drugs to get big and strong, does that mean regular people will use it and then they'll have negative health consequences from using them, like heart attack or, arteriosclerosis, things that, tend to build up with bodybuilders, joint damage, things like that. So would it hurt the normal guy if that was normalized? I think there's a possibility it could, because all of these things do carry risks. So you let me know what you think, and I will talk to you all next time. Have a great day.